If people have got any questions or anything like that, you're welcome to ask me. Otherwise, I'm quite happy just to leave the wallpaper on the screen and just let people read it and come up and talk to me if they want. But I'm literally just chilling out, no agenda, no nothing. I'm just chilling, and if people want to chat, please do. Yeah, I haven't been on a live for a hell of a long time, so I thought it'd be good to just pop on and hopefully speak to other people doing the same work I'm doing. That's mainly why I'm here, really, just to maybe chat with or just give a bit of encouragement and support to other people doing the sort of thing I'm doing. Yeah, I've been mainly on Instagram and Facebook over the last few months, especially working to support Faithless Hijabi, a mental health charity for ex-Muslim women. So I've been doing a lot of that, and haven't been on TikTok quite as much, but every now and then I've been able to listen to the lives of some of the ex-Muslims on this app, and just really grateful for the work they've carried on doing, or they keep on doing. I don't know how they and where they get the stamina from. I listened to Voice of Reason and Maria Mori and Mark Benton, some of your lives that I managed to get on, and it's amazing. I love it, and I don't know how you guys have so much patience with the Muslims that you talk to on there, with people justifying and saying that slavery is fine and child marriage is okay and things like that. I'm just listening in and I'm screaming. And to be fair, it sometimes is triggering as well, because it's the background that I'm from as well. And so it's like really hard to listen to. And there you guys are, day in and day out, listening and talking and arguing with these people. And hats off to you guys. I really appreciate it. So just on here for a bit, just to say thank you, if anything else, for the work you keep doing, even though it is painful. So what have I been up to then? It's the other day, I shared a picture of me having a bacon sandwich for breakfast. That was quite good fun. It was a breakfast of champions, because, when you're brought up Muslim, there's so many restrictions that you have on what you can eat, how you can dress, where you can look. It's incredibly insane, but it's a thing. And I remember my mum, so I was brought up in quite a religious family, but and I remember when I used to look out the window or something like that, or anything like that, and if there were boys passing by, my mum would accuse me of being a slag. This was when I'm a child, and things are so hypersexualized, it's ridiculous. I remember at the age of 7 being told that I can't wear shorts anymore because I was too mature and too adult, and people were going to look at me funny, and be sexualized by me. I'm like, what? Looking back at it now, I'm like, you can't. There's no harm in there's no harm in anyone showing their legs and wearing a pair of shorts. If people can't control themselves, that's their problem. I should not be like not having vitamin D and sunshine and running around because there are perverts out there. You know what I mean? But yeah, just little things like that. It's incredible how much you're restricted. So every now and then I just kind of think about, and I'm really grateful. So with the Faceless Hijabi work I've been doing, they asked me, I was absolutely terrified. They asked me if I could speak at a online conference, are absolutely petrified. But I did it, and it was to protect. It was a conference about protecting blasphemers, and I did quite a lot of research for that, about what the organisation does, and some of the stuff they've supported people with, it's heartbreaking. One of the stories, this lady called Mariam Ayuza, I was talking about her, because they'd helped her with alongside Secular Rescue. They helped her escape Nigeria because, God forbid, she was helping other women improve their lives through the skills initiative that she runs. But also, Miriam, she didn't do anything like say she doesn't believe in Allah. She didn't say she denounced Islam or anything like that. But she was supporting some of the women who were attacked and kidnapped by Boko Haram, and she was helping them. And because she was helping them, she was under constant threats and stuff like that, and it got too dangerous for her to stay in her homeland. And it's it's the cowardice that these grown ass nasty zealots are so pressed by women who are doing nothing but a bit of charity work and supporting other women. It's absolutely friggin' insane. But it's absolutely mental. But yeah, thankfully they got her out. But yeah, there are other stories. I mean, I myself, I remember before any of this ex-Muslim stuff was even a label that anyone could attach to themselves, and it was a thing. I remember when I was 17, 18, and I was absolutely terrified at the time, that because in the cities around me, like Manchester and places and Birmingham and things like that, there were cases of honour killings of Muslim women, Muslim young girls that were around my age, and they were being beaten, they were being unalived and things like that, and the fear was real, because this friggin' verse 434, for us, it's not just a fucking verse that is there. It's something we have to live with. Whether we're ex-Muslim women or we're Muslim women, we have to fucking deal with that shit. We have to see women being beaten because apparently husbands are entitled to do that, and they're our guardians. These things aren't just crappy bits of text. These have an impact on our lives and the cultures that we live in. They make up our culture. And so, unless you've lived as a Muslim, you can't fathom just how painfully difficult it is, and how much people, women and ex-Muslim women, are fighting against this, and it kind of really, really wrecks your brain, and you internalize so much of these things here that you can see on the screen. They're not just bits of text. These are norms and values that are instilled in our parents and our grandparents and so forth. They seep into our psyches, and I didn't, we're not actually taught what the Quran says, but we end up living it. without even knowing why you were living it. I remember my dad once told me, because I'm quite bolshy, I'm quite loud, and I'm quite, I don't take shit. And my dad used to get so angry at the fact that I was confident and that I didn't ask. That was one thing he hated. I couldn't understand why I needed to ask permission from a man, be it my dad or my brother or whoever, to leave the house. I did not fathom it. I did not understand it, and I did not abide by it. I fucking hated that. And I didn't understand why my mum had to either. And so I remember once me and my mum, we went out to see some friends or shopping or something like that. And I remember my dad and my brother talking amongst themselves, and they were saying how stupid I was for not asking permission and things like that, and you know how rude it was and how stupid and nasty it was. But I mean, I was quite lucky that they didn't, you know, take it any further than that. But they couldn't fathom that I didn't get it. It was apparently such an obvious thing that a woman asks for a male's relative's permission to leave the house. Oh my God, it's insane. The amount of shit that we're supposed to do, and that is inbred and it's seeped into the way we're supposed to live. It's insane. I mean, my sister, she's a graduate. She studied bio, something really complicated. I don't even know. I can never remember the name of her degree. It's something to do with biomedicine or something like that. You know, that's how intelligent she is. You know, she went to a prestigious university, but I went to visit her and her daughter, and while I was there, because we'd left the house, when she got back, the first thing she did was pick up the phone to let her mother-in-law know that she went out and that she was back. This is in the UK. You know, and this is what I mean. These shitty verses, they're not just verses there for fun. They're things that are seeped in and rules that we're made to abide by as women. And yeah, so anyway, and I was like, why does she need to know that you've left the house and that you've come back? Why is it any of her business? And my sister didn't think anything of it. She was just like, oh, it's easier just to tell her. I'm like, but it's got nothing to do with her. You're a grown-ass woman. You've got a kid, for God's sake. You know, you have your own job and stuff like that. Why do you need to tell her? But hey, that is the reality that we live in, even in the UK. Yeah, it's absolutely fucking insane. But yeah, anyway, if anyone wants to come up, I'm not good. I know most of the ex-Muslim lives at the moment that I come into, you're usually asking Muslims to come up and have that dialogue, which is absolutely brilliant. I love it. And I love you guys for doing that. But I haven't got the mental space for that. But if any other ex-Muslims want to come up and rant and rave a little bit and just let off a bit of steam, you're welcome to come up. But otherwise, I'm going to go in a little while after I've had a little bit more of a rant. Yeah, anyway, so yeah, one of the things that I just in the middle of writing, because I do some social media work for the charity I mentioned earlier. One of the things that I'm in the middle of writing is stuff for International Women's Day coming up, which is always good fun. You know, because some of you guys might know me, some of you guys might not, but one of the things I am is a lefty. I'm a really proud lefty. I hate people being underpaid and trade unionists and activists being attacked and things like that. And I hate unequal pay and poverty and poor housing. I think there should be social housing. I think there should be the NHS available for all and all that sort of stuff. But anyway, International Women's Day, exactly, up the workers. International Women's Day was, I won't go into the boring history of it because, for me it's fascinating, but other people it might not be. But the crux of International Women's Day is to fight for women's labour rights. It's essentially to fight for women's labour rights across the world. And it's supposed to be a universal thing. But the problem is that no. Anyway, I'm not going to let you distract me, Sim. But so the point of it is to make sure that, women have at the very least, the same pay as men. But the most important thing is to make sure that women have, especially if they're having to work, is that they have a decent standard of living without having to break their backs. And needs are met. Anyway, so it was about joining together women in struggle throughout the world, and to, because collectively, if we fight collectively, we are a lot stronger. So, the whole point of the International Women's Day, so women across the world unite together and fight for better pay, conditions, housing, and all that sort of stuff. But for some reason, the left never got, and the people who set these things up, they never got the memo about Islam. They never got the memo. If you look at, I'm trying not to go off on too much of a tangent, but they never got the frigging memo. They never bothered to think, so we've got to get challenge religion. I'll stick to that, actually. Yeah, they never got the memo that we need to challenge these fucking shitty religions and their scriptures. Because if we don't, then we'll never get that goal. But they never did. On here, yes. They never got the memo. The leftists never got the memo about slavery in Islam or slavery in Christianity. They never challenged it. The fact that you still see lefties sort of like who say that they're Christians, I'm like, or lefties who say that they're Muslims, I'm like, what the friggin' hell? You can't follow a book and scriptures and norms that say all of these things that you can see on the screen, and things like all of these things, and then at the same time say that you've read Karl Marx and that workers of the world should unite and they have nothing to lose but their chain, and at the same time read a crappy book that says, and follow a book that says slavery is good and slavery is ordained by God, and anyone who disagrees or challenges slavery is going against the will of God. It's insane. But there you have it. You have MPs like Zara Sultana in the UK, and Naz Shah and people like that who claim to be Muslim and claim to be socialists. I'm like, what the friggin' hell? Anyway, I'm ranting a little bit, but that's that's not what I'm writing about. That's part of, but one of what I am actually trying to write about is the fact that there's all this cultural relativism and this cultural get the words out. There's this cultural relativism bullshit, which basically where people like the left say, oh yeah, we can't offend people's religious sentiments and we can't offend people's cultural values, and oh yeah, but they're not built like us, they have different needs and things like that. I'm like, no, we don't. We bleed the same, we need food the same, and we have the same basic human needs. Exactly, it's absolute total fucking BS, isn't it? Cultural fucking relativism. So you have, yeah, and so you'll see. So when I first started doing ex-Muslim activism stuff, I remember posting, sharing some ex-Muslim work, material on left-wing groupings, because that's where I've come from, you know what I mean, as a trade unionist and as a socialist. And I just remember being told to shut the fuck up by the lefties because that is being racist. I'm like, it's not being racist, because thinking there are Asian and black people who are dead against these religions. We're not some homogenous religious fanatics across the board. It's not our culture to be religious. That was something that was imposed on us, just like Christian imperialism was imposed on us, Islamic imperialism was imposed on us, you know what I mean? And many of us have rejected it and still reject it. We have a left and right wing in our own nations. We have people who are religious and people who detest religions in our own cultures, in our own nations, for fuck's sake. I've got a guest request. Yeah.
Hello, Rose. Hello,
How
love.
are you? It's great to hear your voice, and I've got to say thank you so very much, because I can see you work your socks off on this app, and you're doing incredible work, and I am so friggin' grateful. So yeah, that's one of the reasons why I'm on here.
Thank you so much. No, but yeah, I just want to say the charity work that you do is so invaluable, and because you're obviously coming from a place of experience, I just think it's absolutely great. It would be great if you could come on Maria Murray's live, because she's got so many more viewers than most people on that, and I think she would really love to hear about your work. I think to go up, and
Yeah,
she
I
does. She does the kufarde, so you don't even
yeah.
have to speak to Muslims. You could just share what you're doing.
Oh, that would be brilliant. I will actually have to message her, because I don't think she probably doesn't even know who I am. So I'll be some random sort of like person out of the woodwork saying, "Oh, can I talk to you, please?" So yeah, I will. I might just say I'm a friend of Voice of Reason. He said, it'd be good if we chatted. That would be really good. Yeah, I will get in touch with her. I am really disorganized, and a bit chaotic, so yeah, I will. I will definitely get in touch with her though. So yeah, I've wanted to ask you actually, how did you get involved with this stuff? Because I don't know your backstory, and I'm really curious because I'm nosy. But you don't
Yeah,
have to
so
share it if it's too
no,
personal.
I don't mind. I've shared it before anyway. So I was brought up Catholic when I was younger, but then I stopped sort of following that. I was in my early teenage years. The reason for it was my mum actually had a miscarriage, and
Oh,
I
okay. I'm
remember
sorry.
asking. I remember asking a Christian that was at the church what happened to that child. Now, I was kind of asking it semi-rhetorically, so I was kind of assuming that a baby would go to heaven. Why would a baby that wasn't even born not go to heaven? But then the person told me because of original sin in Christianity, that they would be in a place called limbo, which is kind of like a waiting room in between heaven and
Yeah.
hell, and because they weren't baptized, they would be in limbo forever. And I
Yeah.
remember, I think I was only 13 or 14. I remember being like, it was like a punch in the gut. I remember thinking, how could a God not like do that to a baby? And then I remember asking more. And then they quoted a biblical verse. I think it's Psalms 51:5 or something. And I remember
Yeah.
looking at it, and it kind of backed this up. So anyway, I kind of fell away from, um, Christianity in that sense. And then I went to university, started some of my classes, I was doing philosophy. So I was getting real into philosophy, and then I started reading on theology, which eventually took me to Islam. And then when I started reading this stuff, I couldn't really believe it. I was taken aback, because what you were saying before about leftists being completely ignorant to Islam, I was one of those people. When people used to... Now, I'm not saying I agree with Tommy Robinson at all. Like, most of his views I find abhorrent about immigrants and things like this. I mean, I'm an immigrant myself, so I can't be anti-immigration. It would be completely hypocritical. But some of his rhetoric on Islam, I remember I used to say, oh, he's a racist, he's a bigot. And I just used to just discredit it because of the messenger rather than the message itself. So I was one of those people that was like ignorant to that fact. But then when I read the Quran, when I started to get deeper into it, then I thought, wow, people just really don't know about this ideology. I was actually going to show, when you were talking about the left wing and Islam, can I show an article? I was actually going to do a video on this.
Of course you can. I have no idea how to move things around on here, though.
If you click on my box at the bottom, and then there should be like a square to expand to.
There we go. Yeah,
that's it there. So this is a city in Michigan, who celebrated. So it says here. So it's a city called Hamtramck in Michigan.
Yes.
They elected a Muslim majority council in 2015, and there was loads of celebration at the time, because there was lots of what they perceived as Islamophobia, anti-Muslim rhetoric from people like Donald Trump, and a lot of like stuff anti-refugee. So they celebrated when they got a Muslim majority council. Now, this year, they have banned pride flags as a result of this. And then it goes on to say that they've spoken out about it. There's a sense of betrayal, that they supported the Muslims getting into the council, but then they've became anti-LGBT and they've went against it. It's on The Guardian, and it's quite a long article. I would suggest, if anyone's interested, read on it. I was going to do a video on this, but it's just to kind of show that there's like a kind of ignorance about what... a lot of left-wing people are completely ignorant to the ideology that they're inviting upon them, I think. You see a lot of... I mean, there's a left-wing girl who's in England, and I was on her lives for a completely different reason, by the way. There was like a homophobic guy that went up. It's not really the thing that I talk about on here, but this was a couple of months ago. I went up to say, like, homophobia is just silly, like, what makes it different, and I was arguing. Then I started following her, and then must have been like, she came on one of my lives and she must have seen it was about Islam, and I remember her being like, why are you talking about Islam though? And I said, well, there's a lot of things that are in this book that I find immoral, one of those including homophobia. Now her reaction, instead of just saying, when I showed her the hadith that says that you should unalive homosexuals basically, now instead of her saying, wow, this is disgusting, we should really fight against this, her being in the LGBT herself, she then said, yeah, but that's in the Bible as well.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, I thought, okay. I said, this is quite a strange reaction though. I was like, so what you're doing is what's like a common defense mechanism for someone that is their religion that you're attacking. This is like whataboutery. It's basically a logical fallacy called whataboutery. I said, I don't care which ideology unaliving homosexuals is in. I think it's wrong in any religion.
Exactly.
I said,
it doesn't.
I said, so why, when I quoted this one, do you want to move on to something? And she was like, no. The conversation then progressed, and I showed her more things. And at the end of it, she then just said, I think you hate Muslims.
Oh, wow.
And to me, this is like very stereotypical of the ignorance that we find in many people that are on the left, is that they associate criticism of Islam as hatred of Muslims. And I said, I couldn't be further from that. I love Muslims. I think that they're the biggest victim of Islam.
Oh, exactly.
I said, I don't have a problem with people. I have a problem with ideologies. These people are fed this ideology and it influences their behaviour. And I think we should be doing our utmost to reverse that, to make sure that the information that they've been fed isn't harming other people. But I found that conversation, I always remember that, because it kind of, to me, it kind of, it struck home with me how far we have to go, because there's a complete ignorance of this. And I understand from a Muslim perspective, they're going to rail against the things that we do, exposing this stuff. But it shows that in the wider society, we have a big task at hand to try and educate people, and there's going to be a lot of pushback from people who think that we're bigots and racists just because we're talking about wanting to stop child marriage or homophobia or slavery. These things are like, should be wide across the board, but when you talk about them in an Islamic sense, for some reason, there's people want to shut you down.
Oh, exactly. One of my good friends on Facebook, he's an ex-Muslim, but he's English, and I think he's northern. Well, I know he's northern, but he's somewhere up north. And he calls it the inverted racism. So people, instead of, they have this sort of like patronizing racism, where like all immigrants and brown people are sort of like victims, and we can't be the aggressor because we're the victims, and we can't be far right because we're the victims and we're the immigrants. And it's for me, it kind of stems from that as well. And so the left feel like they have to protect all of us no matter what, and we're all just one big blob of victims. And I know that sounds, I'm over sort of like exaggerating it a bit, but that's kind of what they're doing. And so, God forbid we talk about the horrible aspects of our culture, which is imposed on us by religion, God forbid we do that, because that would be sort of like targeting a victim, and
yeah,
it's absolutely
I think it's.
insane.
I remember reading about it. I think when I read it, but it's the same concept. I think someone termed it the bigotry of low expectations.
Yeah.
And they basically said that there are lower expectations on people who are non-Caucasian. So it's like, I guess it feeds into like the white savior mentality, and I think you see this quite often, is when they see something that's foreign to them, or so if they see Asian people and they're practicing Islam, they feel like they need to protect this thing because it's foreign to the white identity or something. When in fact it should be the thing that you're railing against. If you're anti-fascist, then Islam should be the thing that you're completely against, because it's just fascism wrapped up in the religion in every sense of the world. In every sense of the world, it's against women, it's against gays, it's against people who leave the religion, it's against other religious people, it's against people who leave the religion. So to me, it's just no different from political fascism. It's just dressed up under a religion.
Exactly. I mean, for me, I know not everybody will necessarily see things the way I do, so that's always why I start with for me. A lot of these religions are designed to prop up the people in power. When you look at any of these religions that we have today, they've all codified master and slave relations, and women being subjected to men, and things like that. They're all about birth privileges and power and keeping it. And if you look at Christianity, it's seen as a white person's religion, but it started in the Middle East, everybody. And it's an expansionist thing, imperialist, colonial, expansionist thing, and so is Islam. It doesn't see colour, but it does at the same time, kind of. That's another thing, going off topic, but they are expansionist things. They're not small kind of personal things. That's the other thing that I think we forget in the West, especially in the UK, because in a lot of ways you probably see this as well, but we are so freaking privileged in the UK to live in a country where most of us are atheists. And, a lot of our institutions are secular. And, you know, the more I talk to other ex-Muslims and atheists from other countries, the more I am grateful that we are living here. But we have this ludicrous thing, an idea that religion is a personal thing, and it's there to make us feel better. It's not designed for that. It was not intended in that way. When it was started, when religions were designed, they weren't designed to make us feel all gooey and better. They were there to keep us quiet and stop us from sort of like arguing and fighting back against our slave masters, and to keep us passive because, oh yeah, don't worry about being not having enough food and stuff like that. You're going to go to heaven when you die, so you'll get your reward then. So don't fight your boss now. And things like that, they are political things, and for some bizarre reason we think it's some sort of personal fashion choice or something like that, and an internal thing. It isn't. And if you look at these like verses and chapters, you won't find a single one that says, oh yeah, in any of these religions that says, oh yeah, your religion is a personal matter, you keep it to yourself. No, none of them say that. None of them say it's just about spiritualism, and being good to yourself and feeling good. It's not about that. It's about power. If
I
that
couldn't
makes
agree
sense.
more. Yeah, and
Yeah.
like I think we are so privileged, and that's why I kind of feel it as a. And there, by the way, there's people that know loads more about Islam than me, but
Mm.
because I'm such a geek and I started reading the Quran and done a little bit of research. Once I found this out, I almost feel like there's a sense of duty that I need to speak out against this because I am in the privileged position of not facing extra or
Yeah.
ostracization from a community or intimidation from my family or possible imprisonment. So we're in a
Mm.
privileged position that we're able to do that. I always find it interesting when people from the Middle East come on my lives, particularly religious people. Sometimes what you just said is like because atheism is almost so underground in some of these countries,
Yeah.
you kind of sense the shock when they ask you like, "What God do you believe in? What's your religion?" And you tell them, "I don't have a religion." Sometimes they respond, they're like, "What? You don't?" There's like a complete shock of like, how can a human being not believe in a God? It's like and it must, to me, I put it down to the fact that they must just never encounter someone who declares himself to be an atheist. Now, I don't doubt there are people in their society that are atheists, but they obviously can't openly say it because there's going to be some sort of reprimand. If it's not a legal punishment, then it's going to be some sort of social thing that they're going to encounter. But yeah, I think when you were saying about the personal thing as well, can I just show something? You've probably seen this before, but there was a there was a poll that was done by Channel 4, a survey that was done around about 9-10 years ago, and it was about what British Muslims specifically really think, and they asked them about loads of different matters, about things that were going on at that point. This was, I think, shortly after Charlie Hebdo. Sorry, it's 8 years. I thought it was 10. So I was talking about things like Charlie Hebdo, homosexuality, things like this. Now, this to me is very enlightening about why religion isn't a personal thing. Because if it was a personal thing, then we would expect much more assimilation of thought with Britain. Now, I'm not saying that everyone in Britain agrees with like gay marriage or something like that, but I would say most people these days have came along to the point of understanding that there's no reason why a gay person shouldn't have the same rights as a straight person. I would like to think, anyway, that most people are along those lines. But when you look in this survey, it's quite telling. There was 52% of British Muslims to respond to this survey do not think that homosexuality should be
Jeez.
legal in Britain. Now to me, that's crazy. You're talking
It
about
is.
over half of British Muslims polled in this thought that homosexuality should be illegal. Now, I get that you might not think it should be allowed in the prisons of your religion, but to say that something should be illegal on a societal level is, yeah, to me that's scary. It says here 47% do not believe that it is acceptable for a school teacher to be homosexual. So they don't think it's
Jeez.
acceptable for something that you're born with. You're literally born with your sexual orientation, and they're saying that just because you're born with a particular orientation, that should preclude you from being able to teach in school. Now, yeah, and you can keep going down. Some of them are 32. This was just after Charlie Hebdo, by the way. I
Mm.
think it was shortly after. So it
Yeah.
says 32% refuse to condemn those who take part in violence against those who mock the Prophet. So this, to give you an idea, that we're talking about 1/3 of people sort of were in agreement with what happened to Charlie Hebdo, or at least they wouldn't condemn the people
Yeah.
that did Charlie Hebdo. 39% agree that wives should always obey their husbands. So these aren't like
Jeez.
now, I'm not saying that those are like exclusively just Muslim or Islamic principles, because there are Christians and other religious beliefs that believe that there's a hierarchy in the family and stuff like this. But to me, this is like, and by the way, it goes on for stuff. So talks
Yeah.
about 66% can completely condemn those who take part in stoning those who commit adultery. But that then means that 1/3 of people that agree with stoning for
It's it
adultery. So
it's incredible, isn't it? I mean, what is really particularly sad is these views that they're holding, and those things that you've just put up. Those are things that are practiced and put in, laws that are put in place to ensure those values are, adhered to in countries like Pakistan and, Afghanistan and Saudi and Bangladesh, and all these countries that a lot of us British Muslim migrants or second generation migrants, our families have left because they're so impoverished, and and there's a reason. Sorry, I'm not getting my words out very straight, but and if they really like these values, they would never like they don't like them so much that they wouldn't go back to these countries and live there, because they're Muslim countries, and it
I
just
agree with you. I think there's
yeah,
a
it just the
hypocrisy.
hypocrisy. Yeah.
We see people sitting in the West. This is what really boils my blood, is when, particularly when women do this, but when we see Western women sitting in the comfort of a Western country where all their rights are protected, and they can do everything that violates the Sharia, like you were saying earlier on, go out unaccompanied, or
Yeah.
wear what you like, all these things that they wouldn't be allowed to do under the Sharia, and they're advocating for Sharia. And I just think it's just so, hypocritical, and it just leaves a sour taste in my mouth when we think about people like Masa Amini and things like
Yeah.
this. When we think about women who are under this oppression, who are really fighting for their rights, and in some cases either losing their liberty, so taken away for speaking out
Exactly.
against it, or in some crazy situations like Masa Amini's, she lost her life for doing what? For uncovering a little bit of her hair. And we see these
Exactly.
Western women who are sitting and advocating for this. They don't want it for themselves enough, because obviously if they did want it for themselves, they would be booking a plane ticket and going there. But they're going to, from the
Exactly.
comfort of their own home, they're going to advocate it for other women. And I just think that's just cowardly, yeah, and just so hypocritical. It's like Sharia for thee, but not for me. I'm
Oh,
happy sitting in my
exactly.
I'm happy sitting in my Starbucks world with my Netflix and Spotify, where I can listen to my music, wear what I want, speak to men, free mix, wear what I want going out, don't have to be accompanied. But I'm going to advocate that all other women that happen to live under those systems have to do that. And to me, it's, yeah, there's just like a hypocrisy about it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of them don't even see the hypocrisy either. That it's this bizarre sort of like cognitive dissonance that goes on. So on the one hand, they're really happy to live in the West and have the freedoms, but at the same time, they want something that is completely opposite. And they don't necessarily see anything wrong with that when sometimes when you listen to them, and it just blows my brain. I'm like, if you're going to follow something, do it properly and do it to the fullest, if that makes sense. Don't like mix and match and dilute it, make sure you understand it as well. um yeah, I also remember, like, in one of your lives, you were discussing Islamic slavery, and I remember particularly there's this one live that you had, and there were a couple of Muslim girls that came up, young girls that came up, and they had no idea about Islamic slavery or you can't grape a slave woman, and they still were defending Islam. And they were so adamant that Islam was still the best thing. But I'm glad you do those lives, because I could see that, if they do take the time after the live to go and look this up for themselves, I know there'll be those questions. And, it's not necessarily something that they're going to acknowledge straight away, but I'm hoping it gets the ball rolling for them and stuff like that, in terms of them changing and liberating themselves, and
We
things
had a
like
guy
that.
up. I don't normally like naming people, but he was particularly vile in some of his views. So I'm just going to say it. SF man, his name is on the app, and he was on a live, and we were talking about slavery. He did the usual thing. He was dressing it up. Oh, but you've got Islamic slavery's nice slavery, and it's different slavery. And I said what they want to always do is compare Islamic slavery to transatlantic slavery. Now, to me, just all slavery is wrong. I don't care if it's transatlantic, Arabic, if it's the Byzantine Empire. I don't care. If a human being owns another human being as property, I just think it's wrong. What he then went on to say, again, this is a man in the 21st century who lives in London, who has 2 or 3 children. He said that later on in the conversation, he says that we should legalise slavery. He says slavery is still happening today, and what we should do is, rather than abolishing it or making attempts to abolish it across the world, it's always going to exist. So what we should do is legalise it and use the Islamic framework to regulate it. And I said, just imagine a 21st century man living in a Western world. Now, he has 3 children. I then asked him, would you be happy if any of your children grew up to be slaves? Of course not. Of course he wasn't happy with that. When we went on to the child marriage topic, I asked him, did he agree with child marriage? He had to say yes, because he's a Muslim. I said, would you marry any of your children to an adult man? No, I wouldn't marry any of mine. I would wait till they were at least 19, 20. So to me, again, there's this hypocrisy. I said, you're advocating this for other human beings. You're advocating other human beings to be enslaved and other children to be married, but you don't want it for your own. Again, there's just a complete lack of compassion. It's just like, if it's not happening to me or mine, then it's okay. As long as it protects this religion, then it's okay.
Yeah.
And it's just, I just wish people could break free from the imprisonment that are in their mind and see the horrors that are involved with this. In fact, I know that I would never want people to go through that horror, but honestly, sometimes it makes me think, like, if you could just experience a tiny smidgen of what that would feel like to be someone's property, maybe you would stop advocating for these atrocities. Because it's just, it's bizarre. You couldn't go down the street and pick up an average person in Britain and ask them, do they want to legalise slavery? I would imagine that those are completely fringe views. But when you speak to these people who have got prominent voices online and doing dawah most days, they come out with these absolutely bizarre opinions. And the thing on TikTok is they can create these communities where they seem like a louder voice than they are, if you know what I mean. Because if you were to poll people in Britain and say who wants to legalise slavery, I imagine it would be like less than 0.5%. It would be like a fraction. But then when you get a community together of 200 or 300, 400 people from all over the world, they can bring people into this madness, and they can it can almost seem to them like it's way more popular than it is. and then this is why they can draw people in, and then they can bait people with the Dawa script, and then they can get people on board. But we just need to, however many people convert to this. I said, because people, when I said this to the SSF man, he said, "You're never going to stop Islam, fastest growing religion, all this stuff." And I said, I don't care. I said, I don't care if everyone else in the world is Muslim. If I know what's in the Quran and I know what are in the Hadith, and I know what my principles are, I still wouldn't convert. Even if I was to lose my life as a result of that.
Absolutely,
My principles
yeah.
are worth way more than that. So to me, I'm not going to, I think we just need to keep speaking out about it. You do a wonderful job, so hopefully you keep doing it.
And yourself as well. Thank you so much for doing what you're doing and taking the time and everything. Yeah, it's really hair raising. I remember I do I do listen to, I love listening into your lives. I remember also there was this Muslim from I think he was Pakistani, he may have been Bengali, he was South Asian. And one of the things he was saying that was, oh yeah, Islamic slavery, it doesn't apply anymore because slavery doesn't exist anymore. And oh, that was so painful to listen to. He was just, oh, yeah, I can't get my words out. There's so many words wanting to fall out of my mouth because it's so ludicrous what he was, the arguments he was making and the way he was backtracking and things like that. But this is like a real threat to us today. You know, they say that Islamic slavery, you know, is just something for the past, but Islam is supposed to be for all time. But also in places like Jordan and Yemen, you have they've been videoed open slave markets where people are on the actual in public selling slaves. And then you look at how a lot of Black Africans from Nigeria and Kenya and stuff like that are tricked or trafficked into the UAE and Saudi Arabia, and they are treated horrendously. One of the ex-Muslim women I work with in the charity I work with, I volunteer for, she's from Saudi Arabia, and she only left about 9 years ago, and managed to escape to the US. And she was saying that her, I won't actually share because it's quite a personal story, but some of the harrowing stories about how migrant workers are treated there is absolutely horrendous. And yeah, these things, like I was going on about before, they're not just verses and texts in a random book. They are things that are unfortunately seeped into our everyday lives, and they have an effect on human beings, on actual human breathing beings. And it needs to be challenged. And sadly, you know, during the Qatar World Cup, it was a great opportunity for the trade unions across the globe to say no to these migrant trafficking practices that are done under Islamic law, and the kafala system, which it's very close to it's very similar to slavery and a lot of the Islamic principles, and these things are practiced in Qatar and places like that. And the one of the biggest bodies of trade unions, international trade union bodies, was like, oh, Qatar is fine for migrant labour, they've made a few changes, that's absolutely fine. And there was so little challenge to challenge these practices in the Middle East, and it was fucking infuriating. On a similar breath, that during these, just after Samuel Paty had been brutally unalived, I was still, around that time, I was still very much still following more trade unionists and lefties and stuff like that. I still follow more of their sort of accounts and interacting with them a lot more, less so nowadays. But I remember just there was when I looked through all of the sort of like lefty social media accounts and their media news, their websites and things like that. Whether it be the Socialist Party, the Socialist Workers' Party, the Labour Party website, and all the rest of it, and Novara Media, trying to think of other ones, but there was hardly anything there was nothing in those papers about the murder of Samuel Paty, and there was nothing in the papers about apostasy laws, and how the situation, the brutal unaliving of Samuel Paty is something that is just the norm in Middle Eastern countries and Islamic countries, and nobody bats an eyelid in those countries. And if nothing else, I think it's something like 12 countries, it's actually the state, the government actually unalives you for leaving religion or questioning or blaspheming religion. There was no solidarity or understanding or attempt to anything. I'm still reeling from how bad it is in those circles and on the left, that they just completely they didn't give a shit and they didn't report on it. And to make it worse, when I was in these like Labour left sort of like Facebook groups and stuff like that, there were all these Muslims coming up and saying how they were really scared and they have to put up with racism because of what happened with Samuel Paty. I'm like, it's not about you. Yes, racism is disgusting, and and it's horrendous, and it happens, and there is anti-Muslim bigotry, but this was not about you. This was about the unaliving of a man for showing a frigging cartoon, and it just begged belief, because I challenged that, and the response was, it was just. It's just ludicrous, the kind of atmosphere that you get there. I am ranting a little bit, but Voice, thank you very much.
No, you're right, because like what you're saying is just so interesting. Like, I agree with you just wholeheartedly. I'm very, very left wing, so I'm against racism. But the thing about being against discrimination is that when you're anti-discrimination, it's not only anti things that you are. You need to be anti-discrimination across the board, and that's not what we see. Do you remember in Birmingham a couple of years ago, you had it was like a national curriculum for schools that were rolling out the LGBT stuff.
Yeah.
And now it was a national curriculum. It wasn't just like one school that was going rogue and just putting things in their books. But in Birmingham, you literally had hundreds of Muslim parents who were protesting outside the school with signs, with homophobic messages. I think they were attacking. Did they not attack the school? And I think they painted it at the weekend or something like that. Now this is what I mean, is you can't be anti-discrimination of you, but you're pro-discrimination of other people. This is all-encompassing. If you expect to be not discriminated against, then there's a buy-in to that, as you shouldn't be able to discriminate against other people. I used to work with a girl, I won't say too much because I don't give away where I work, but anyway, I worked with a girl who was from Nigeria, born-again Christian, very devout Christian and things like that. Now, she was involved in part of the Black, Asian and minority ethnic group that was in my organisation. She was very vocal about this, and she'd done brilliant talks, by the way, but she did a talk about the racism that people can experience in society and in the workplace, and she was like very involved in this, and she was doing great work in that. Now, literally, I think it was a couple of weeks after doing a big talk on this, we had like a Pride Week in the work, and people were coming around doing basically the same thing that she was doing, but just talking about LGBT inclusivity in the workplace and in society and the things that they can face. For the whole meeting, she sat with her arms crossed, tutting loudly, sighing loudly, facing away from them, making it just so obvious that she was against it. And I remember just sitting, just getting angry at that. And I thought, you can't just be against discrimination when it's happening to you, but be pro-discrimination when it's happening to others. Again, this is just hypocrisy. If you're saying that people should be treated like human beings and shouldn't be discriminated against because of their skin colour, then don't discriminate against someone for something else that someone else can't change, like their sexual orientation. They're born with that in the same way that you're born with your skin colour. It really annoys me. So, yeah, when people have these views, as you say, people making it about them, we should fight against discrimination, but on all fronts.
Absolutely.
Not just in things that happen to involve you. I've got no respect for people that want to say discrimination for thee but not for me. It's just, again, it's just like double standards again.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think going back to that, I think for me, that's why having like ex-Muslims come out and say, saying what we're saying, is that we don't care about this religious stuff. We don't want it. Sorry, I am really getting tired now, so I'm going to go in a little bit. But yeah, it's just really important that we stand out and say, look, just because you're saying something against Islam, it doesn't mean you're saying something against all Muslims or all brown people, because there are Muslims and brown peoples who are becoming ex-Muslims and who are rejecting it. And so, we are part of that discussion of fighting discrimination and fighting all discrimination for everybody, so nobody has to face any sort of BS like this. And I'm not saying we're going to ever have an amazing world, but the point is to keep on fighting for things to be better, not for things to be perfect, but for things to be better and to make progress and keep making progress. So yeah, but I'm gonna go now. I am really sorry I can't stay on for much longer, and I'm sorry for the couple of people who wanted to come up as a guest. I just haven't got the mental bandwidth to have more than one person on and stuff like that. But thank you so much, Voice, for doing what you're doing and coming on. And yeah, everybody look after yourselves and take care and keep using your voice. And yeah, just be excellent to one another. All right, take care, guys. Bye for now.